Ben McAllister was a cowboy through and through. With his worn hat, dusty boots, and strong hands, he embodied the spirit of the West. Each day, he rose before dawn to tend to his little ranch, a patch of land in the vast expanse of rolling hills and open skies. But these days, life was more challenging than ever. The sun beat down on his crops, and the dry wind swept across the fields, leaving behind cracked earth that whispered of hardship. The weight of his struggles pressed heavily on Ben's shoulders. The ranch, once filled with promise, now seemed like a burden. Bills piled up on the kitchen table, and he felt the sting of every bad crop season. He worked tirelessly but often found himself wondering if it would ever be enough. His only horse, a spirited chestnut named Rusty, was not just a mode of transport, he was Ben's loyal companion. Together, they faced the challenges of ranching side by side. As Ben looked out over his land one hot afternoon, he noticed a figure in the distance. A woman was riding toward him along the dusty trail. She didn't look like anyone he had seen in these parts before. Her clothes were clean and neatly pressed, and she sat tall in the saddle with an air of determination. As she drew nearer, tiredness seemed to weigh her down, her brow was furrowed and her shoulders slumped slightly. Feeling a pang of sympathy for this weary traveler, Ben wiped his brow and approached her. "You look like you could use a break," he said gently as she dismounted, clearly exhausted from her journey. "Thank you," she replied with a soft smile that lit up her tired face. "I'm Violet St Clair." Ben extended a hand in greeting but quickly noticed how delicate her grip was compared to his callous palms. "I'm Ben McAllister," he introduced himself with a nod. "What brings you out here all alone?" Violet sighed deeply as she glanced around at the open fields. "Just seeking some peace away from my world back east," she confessed. "I needed to escape for a while." Ben understood that feeling all too well. Sometimes it felt good to be free from obligations and expectations, even if just for a moment. As they spoke, he couldn't help but admire Violet's spirit despite her weariness. An idea struck him suddenly. "If you don't mind riding Rusty, I can lend him to you for your travels," he offered without hesitation. Violet looked surprised but grateful. "Are you sure? He's your only horse." "I'll manage," Ben assured her with a smile that masked his own worries for just a moment. With that simple act of kindness, their fates intertwined in ways neither could foresee, a cowboy struggling to keep his dreams alive and an heiress yearning for connection in a lonely world ahead on an uncharted path together. The sun hung high in the sky, casting a golden hue over the rugged trail that wound through the hills. Dust danced in the heat as Ben stood by his ranch, taking in the sights and sounds that surrounded him. The distant mountains loomed like guardians over the landscape, their peaks capped with snow that glimmered in the sunlight. It was a beautiful land, but on days like these, it felt harsh and unforgiving. As he gazed out, Ben noticed a solitary figure moving slowly along the path. He shielded his eyes from the sun to get a better look. The woman riding toward him was clearly weary, her posture sagged beneath the weight of her journey, and her clothes, though well-kept, had become dusty from the trail. The sight tugged at Ben's heartstrings. Every rancher knew how tough life could be out here, and he could sense that this woman was feeling those same struggles. Ben wiped his brow and took a deep breath before mounting Rusty. He felt an urge to help, his compassionate nature pushing him to reach out to this stranger in need. As he approached her, he could see the fatigue etched on her face, her eyes were wide and tired, searching for refuge. "Howdy there," Ben called out, trying to sound cheerful despite his own worries. "You look like you could use a break." She dismounted with a soft sigh, her legs shaky from hours in the saddle. "Thank you," she replied with a faint smile that barely concealed her exhaustion. "I'm Violet St Clair." "Name's Ben McAllister," he said, extending his hand to greet her. He noted how delicate her grip was compared to his roughened palms, softened by years of labor on the ranch. "What brings you out this way?" he asked, curious about her journey. Violet looked around at the expansive landscape beyond them. "I needed to escape my life back east for a while," she admitted with a hint of longing in her voice. "It feels good to be free for a bit." Ben nodded knowingly. Freedom was something he cherished too, even amid his own struggles. As they talked, he couldn't help but admire Violet's determination despite her weary demeanor. An idea suddenly sparked in his mind, a way to help her in her moment of need while easing some of his own burdens. "If you don't mind sharing Rusty for your travels," he said cautiously, "I can lend him to you." Violet's eyes widened in surprise. "Are you sure? He's your only horse." "It's all right," Ben replied with an encouraging smile, trying to mask his own concerns about parting with Rusty temporarily. "I can manage for a day or two." With those simple words, an unspoken bond began to form between them. It was an act of compassion that transcended their different backgrounds, a cowboy willing to give what little he had to a weary traveler seeking solace on a rugged trail. Little did either of them know how this small gesture would change their lives forever as they embarked on paths filled with new possibilities and shared dreams ahead. As Ben watched Violet ride away on Rusty, he couldn't help but think about the unexpected encounter with the weary traveler. While he admired her spirit, little did he know about the life she was leaving behind, an extravagant world filled with wealth yet lacking warmth. Violet St Clair had grown up in a grand estate nestled among sprawling gardens and marble fountains where luxury surrounded her at every turn. Her family was one of the wealthiest in the East, known for their opulent parties and endless social gatherings. From a young age, Violet was expected to fit the mold of a perfect heiress, polished, poised, and presentable at all times. Yet beneath the surface of her glossy lifestyle lay an ache she could never quite shake off. Despite the fancy clothes and glamorous events filled with laughter and music, Violet often felt like an outsider in her own life. The laughter around her seemed hollow as she sat in crowded rooms, longing for real connection. Guests would flutter around her like butterflies, but they rarely saw beyond her title or the wealth it brought. Feeling stifled by expectations placed upon her, Violet took refuge in books that whisked her away to thrilling adventures beyond her gilded cage. Often found hidden in the library of their estate, she would lose herself in stories of brave heroes and daring quests, worlds where emotions ran deep and authenticity thrived. She craved freedom from her responsibilities and sought genuine friendships rather than connections dictated by status. After countless parties and functions where she felt more alone than ever, Violet decided enough was enough. With a heavy heart but a determined spirit, she packed a small bag to embark on an adventure of her own making. The open road called to her like a siren song. Perhaps along the way she'd find what had been missing from her life, the sense of belonging that went beyond societal expectations. The dusty trailben had lent his horse unmarked the start of this journey, a search for solace away from sparkling chandeliers and chattering conversations that left her feeling empty. As she rode through rugged terrains under wide blue skies, Violet felt like an explorer setting foot into a new world, wondering where it might take her. With each passing mile away from her grand estate, she could feel layers of loneliness peeling away slowly but surely. It wasn't just about escaping a life defined by wealth, it was about discovering who she truly was outside those gilded walls. In this place, filled with fresh air and unrestrained landscapes, Violet began to dream again. Little did she know that this courageous decision would lead not only to self-discovery but also to unexpected connections with people whose hearts were free from constraint, the very kindred spirits she yearned for all along. As the sun dipped below the horizon, painting the sky with hues of orange and purple, Violet rode onward toward whatever destiny awaited her beyond the horizon, and unbeknownst to both she and Ben, their paths were set on a course towards significant change. As Violet journeyed along the rugged trail, her heart felt lighter with every mile she rode away from her gilded cage. The open air filled her lungs, a refreshing contrast to the stuffy rooms of her family's estate. Her desire for adventure pulsed within her like a drumbeat, urging her forward into the unknown. For the first time in ages, she felt alive, as though she were shedding a skin that had become too tight. Violet had long been suffocated by the expectations of high society. From fancy dress balls to endless luncheons with well-coiffed ladies, all those moments meant to showcase her status as an heiress felt more like a performance than real life. Conversations floated around her like wispy smoke, and while laughter sounded sweet, it failed to reach her heart. Each social gathering was scripted, with guests pretending to be interested in her life while secretly sizing her up for their own benefit. It made her feel invisible, lost among the beautiful masks everyone wore. As she navigated this new world on the back of Rusty, each gentle step of the horse took her further away from those expectations. In this vast land filled with rolling hills and wildflowers, she sought out true freedom, a break from being defined solely by her money and status. With every stretch of the road beneath Rusty's hooves, Violet could almost feel the heavy chains that bound her beginning to snap. Driven by a longing for genuine experiences, she hoped that solitude would allow her to reflect on who she was outside of her family's name. She wanted to seek out adventure, to write her own story rather than live someone else's narrative. While she longed for connection, it had to be authentic and grounded in understanding rather than pretense. Thus, Violet embraced the open road with an adventurous spirit. She craved spontaneous moments that brought excitement, the rustle of leaves in a summer breeze, the sound of rushing water from a nearby stream, and starry nights unclouded by city lights. She dreamed of meeting people with stories written on their faces, individuals shaped by experiences rather than wealth. At times, memories of her privileged life surfaced unbidden. She recalled the lavish gardens and tall marble columns, beautiful but lifeless structures that had never housed laughter that echoed into their depths. In those memories lay fleeting feelings of nostalgia, yet they were swiftly replaced by visions of wilderness, the promise of unknown trails and uncharted paths. With every turn in the road, Violet felt empowered, as though she was reborn with each passing moment. Riding Rusty through vast landscapes wasn't just travel. It was an awakening, a chance to explore new ideas and rediscover herself without constraints. Here, she could wear whatever clothes she pleased without concern for fashion or flair. Here, she could be herself. Little did Violet know that this journey was not merely about escape, it was also a quest for genuine connection with those outside of her upbringing, the very connection she sought in Ben McAllister, whose spirit mirrored hers in unexpected ways amidst their differing backgrounds. As twilight settled over the sky painted with hues of pink and purple, Violet felt a surge of hope within her, a guiding light leading her toward adventure waiting just beyond the horizon. As Violet prepared to ride away on Rusty, a bittersweet feeling washed over her. She mounted the horse, and for a fleeting moment, she turned back to take in Ben McAllister's rugged figure standing against the backdrop of his struggling ranch. The sun began to dip low, casting long shadows that danced across the ground. Though they had only met briefly, there was an undeniable connection between them. It felt as if they were kindred spirits seeking solace from their respective hardships. "Thank you for your kindness," Violet said, her voice carrying a genuine warmth. Her heart swelled with gratitude towards Ben for lending her his only horse, a gesture that spoke volumes about his character. Ben nodded, trying to hide the nervous flutter in his stomach. "Just take care of Rusty," he replied, feeling a strange mix of hope and worry as he watched her prepare to leave. He had seen countless travelers pass through these parts, but something about Violet lingered in his thoughts. Perhaps it was her candid nature or the weariness in her eyes that mirrored his own struggles. With a gentle nudge, Rusty started to move forward along the trail, and Ben felt a sense of finality wash over him. "I hope it helps," he called out after her. It was more than just lending her a horse, it represented his hope that this simple act could ease some of the burden she carried weighing heavy on her heart. Violet looked back one last time, catching Ben's eye. "It already has," she replied softly before turning back to face the path ahead, each galloping step taking her further into unknown territory filled with possibilities. Freedom awaited her just beyond each bend. As she rode deeper into the landscape painted in warm sunlight and vibrant colors, Violet felt an exhilarating rush surge through her veins. The windswept plains stretched out before her like an endless invitation to explore, a far cry from the confines of lonely ballrooms and social pretenses. Yet in leaving behind one world, she sensed an absence too. There was something stirring in her heart, a newfound yearning for connection intertwined with farewell. On his end, Ben stood rooted to the spot where they last spoke, watching as the distant figure became smaller against the horizon. He hoped that Rusty would carry Violet safely through her journey and bring her solace as much as it meant for him in giving her such respite. Yet along with those wishes came pangs of doubt. Would he ever see her again? The reality sank deep into him. This encounter might have been fleeting, but it felt significant, a brief episode filled with shared understanding amidst their contrasting lives. As twilight began to cloak the land with shades of blue and indigo, he returned to his ranch, burdens weighing just slightly less on his shoulders. The evening air wrapped around him like a soothing embrace as thoughts of Violet lingered like fading echoes, reminders that kindness could forge connections even amid loneliness. He silently hoped that their paths might cross once more, because somewhere along that rugged trail lay not just adventure for Violet but perhaps new beginnings for both their hearts, a chance at rediscovery waiting patiently on distant horizons yet unknown. The sun rose higher in the sky as Violet pressed on, Rusty's steady gait providing her with a sense of rhythm that echoed her determination. The trail twisted and turned, revealing rocky outcrops and patches where the grass struggled to grow. Each step of the horse felt comforting, yet Violet could feel the strain in her muscles as she navigated the challenging terrain ahead. With every bump and jolt, she reminded herself why she had embarked on this journey. She was no longer just an heiress bound by expectations, she was a woman seeking to reshape her identity amidst nature's vastness. The changing landscape mirrored her own internal struggles, wild yet beautiful, unpredictable yet exhilarating. As they traveled deeper into the wilderness, Violet encountered steep hills that rose sharply before her like steep cliffs. With grit and resolve, she urged Rusty forward, feeling the muscles in his powerful legs work beneath her. "Come on, boy," she encouraged him, patting his mane as they climbed. "We can do this together." Her voice held a mix of excitement and nervousness. It was a mountain to conquer, both literally and metaphorically. But just as they began to crest one steep incline, a loose rock slid beneath Rusty's hooves, causing him to falter briefly. Violet tightened her grip, feeling the adrenaline pulse through her veins as she fought to maintain her balance. "Easy there," she called out reassuringly, willing both of them to stay steady. In that moment of uncertainty, she felt a rush of fear but quickly reminded herself of her purpose. It fueled her resilience. As they reached the top, Violet allowed herself a moment to catch her breath. The view below was breathtaking, a panorama of rolling hills dotted with wildflowers painting vibrant splashes against the earthy tones of the ground. In that moment, all doubt faded away. It was as if nature embraced her with open arms. She felt exhilarated and empowered. This journey was hers for the taking. However, not all moments were filled with beauty. The challenges persisted. As noon approached, she found herself expertly navigating through thick brush that clawed at her clothes and skin. Thorns snagged on her jacket while low branches threatened to knock off her hat. Each obstacle tested her spirit and resolve. But Violet pushed through with steely determination, reminding herself that discomfort was merely part of discovery. "Just keep going," she whispered under her breath as sweat trickled down her forehead. "This is where I find out who I really am." Each challenge became a stepping stone toward self-discovery, a way to shed layers from who people thought she should be. At one point in the afternoon, tired but unbroken, Violet stopped at a small creek to let Rusty drink fresh water while she splashed cool droplets onto her face. Staring into the rippling surface reminded her of reflections not just in water but also in life, a chance to see beyond what lay on the surface. With renewed energy as they continued along their path far away from societal expectations and empty smiles, Violet strengthened further not only in body but in spirit too. She felt alive in ways she had never experienced before. Unfiltered by wealth or prestige, her heart began to sing alongside the songbirds overhead. With each hoofbeat resonating through the earth beneath them, Violet stepped forward boldly into uncertainty armed with resilience and hope. And somewhere out there awaited not just adventure, but profound transformation for a woman ready to embrace whatever lay ahead on this wild trail called life. After lending Rusty to Violet, Ben returned to the daily grind of his ranch where the harsh reality of life began to settle heavily on his shoulders. The sun had risen early, casting a golden glow over the fields that seemed to mock the struggles he faced. He could almost hear the wind whispering reminders of his dwindling resources as he stepped outside, the familiar scent of hay and earth filling his lungs. Ben tossed a few pieces of stale bread to the chickens, watching as they pecked nervously at the ground. "Aren't you lot a little too skittish?" he muttered to himself, even though he knew they were reflecting his own raw nerves. With little money to buy feed, each day felt like a struggle against time and fate. As he began his morning chores, he found himself glancing toward the stable where Rusty usually stood. The absence of his companion pressed heavily on him. Without Rusty, the daily work ahead seemed more challenging. He had to rely solely on himself to manage everything on the ranch. The thought rattled through his mind, could he manage if something went wrong? The fields showed signs of harsh drought, with some crops wilting beneath the relentless sun. Just yesterday, Ben inspected what remained. The weeds still thrived where crops should have flourished. His heart sank under the weight of worry as he walked through the rows of parched plants. If this season didn't produce enough yield, he'd struggle even more to pay off debts that were quickly catching up with him. "Just hang in there," he said aloud as if it would somehow resonate with the earth itself, but deep down, uncertainty knotted in his stomach. He could already picture the local bank manager's scowl if payment wasn't made on time. It felt like a looming storm cloud ready to burst. He had witnessed other ranchers pack up their lives after being pushed too far by financial burdens. After tending to the fields, Ben returned to the farmhouse where he rifled through scattered bills cluttering the kitchen table. Each envelope felt like a reminder of his limitations and failures. It stirred frustration and fear within him. He sighed as he took a moment to breathe, running a hand through his tousled hair while leaning against the counter. A cup of coffee would have helped ease this mood, but the pot had run dry days ago. As another long day unfurled before him, Ben clung tightly to hope that Rusty would return soon and that Violet would find solace with her adventure, allowing her to perhaps see everything anew. Maybe she'd find a way to help him along the way? He had shared more than just a horse. Lending Rusty felt like giving part of himself, a sliver of hope that someone might return with kindness or support when times grew darker. The sun set slowly in the distance, casting an orange hue over his weary land. Ben stood on his porch, looking out toward where Violet had disappeared down the trail, wishing for her safe return but also for some relief from his relentless worries. Maybe there was a future waiting for both him and Violet, one filled with opportunities as vast as those rolling hills, but for now all he could do was carry on and trust in a world that felt increasingly uncertain every passing day. In this quiet moment, with shadows stretching long into twilight, he found a flicker of hope amid uncertainty, a connection forged from selfless generosity waiting patiently for brighter days ahead. As Violet rode into the nearby town, the bustling sounds of life filled her ears, laughter, chatter, and the clanging of metal against metal. The streets were lined with wooden buildings weathered by time, and the scent of fresh bread wafted through the air from a nearby bakery. It was vibrant and alive, an inviting contrast to the isolation she had felt in her privileged upbringing. Yet within this lively scene, she found herself feeling an odd sense of detachment. After dismounting Rusty and tying him to a hitching post, Violet took a moment to compose herself, brushing dirt off her clothes before stepping into a small cafe at the corner of the street. The warm embrace of the place enveloped her as she entered, filled with locals engaged in animated conversations over steaming mugs. She approached the counter and ordered a cup of coffee, but as she waited, her mind wandered back to her previous life. Seated at a table by the window with a view of passers-by outside, Violet felt like an outsider watching through glass rather than participating in life. She observed groups of friends sharing jokes and stories that seemed genuine. Here were connections that felt real and warm. Yet it highlighted what had been missing in her own life. The superficial relationships that defined her past were starkly contrasted by these moments of laughter and camaraderie. Violet wrapped her hands around the warm mug and sipped slowly, letting the rich flavor ground her in this new reality. Each sip brought reflections on choices made under pressure, her decisions dictated by familial expectations rather than personal desires. In high society, interactions had often been transactional, friendships forged for appearances rather than authentic connection. A sense of longing stirred inside her chest as she recalled countless gatherings filled with glitz and glamour where conversations felt rehearsed as if everyone played their part in a never-ending performance titled The Perfect Heiress. Those moments felt empty now compared to the vibrant authenticity that surrounded her here. She considered how different this place was from her estate filled with lavish parties where connections were built on wealth rather than shared experiences or true understanding. The idea that real friendship could come from someone simply being themselves instead of wearing masks began to resonate deeply within Violet. In that quaint cafe surrounded by strangers who embodied genuine warmth, she began to see glimpses of who she wanted to be away from societal constraints. A woman ready to forge connections based on mutual respect and companionship rather than status or fortune. As patrons came and went, laughter continued to fill the air like musical notes dancing around her heart. It sparked hope for what lay ahead. Perhaps this journey would lead to more than just self-discovery. It may also grant her opportunities to build relationships grounded in authenticity. Finishing her coffee, Violet stood up slowly, invigorated by newfound determination. She decided then that this adventure wasn't just about escaping loneliness but also about opening herself up to real friendships connected not by titles or wealth but by shared dreams amid life's simplicity. With Rusty waiting patiently outside the cafe, she stepped into the sun once more with renewed purpose, each stride echoing hope for genuine human connection waiting for her beyond every twist in the road ahead. A chance at building something deeper rooted in understanding rather than mere appearances. Several days passed since Violet had embarked on her journey, and with each new experience, she felt more grounded in her decision to seek authenticity. Meanwhile, back at his ranch, Ben found himself frequently glancing toward the horizon, hoping to see a familiar figure riding back toward him. Each sun that rose and set seemed to carry her further away, but he was comforted by the thought that his act of kindness might have made a difference in her life. One crisp morning, while Ben was tending to the few remaining crops in his fields, he heard the distant sound of hooves pounding against the earth. His heart skipped a beat. He turned to see a figure approaching on horseback, and as they drew closer, he recognized Rusty, the spirited chestnut he had lent to Violet. Ben wiped his brow and took a deep breath as a mix of anticipation and nervousness surged within him. When Violet finally came into view, a radiant smile spread across her face upon spotting him. She looked different, more confident and invigorated, her eyes sparkling with gratitude. "Ben, I came to find you," she called out as she dismounted gracefully from Rusty. "Violet," he replied, surprised yet pleased. "I didn't expect you back so soon." She stepped closer, visibly excited. "I wanted to thank you properly for lending me your horse. My journey has been incredible, it's changed everything for me." Ben felt warmth flood through him at her words. "I'm glad you're safe," he said, a smile breaking across his face. "How was the trip?" As they settled into a conversation, Violet shared her adventures, stories of meeting kind-hearted strangers, exploring unfamiliar landscapes, and finding moments of genuine connection that had filled her heart with joy. Each experience she recounted seemed more vibrant than the last, reflecting a newfound sense of clarity. "I realized that my past life was filled with superficiality," she confessed, hesitating for only a moment before continuing. "I was surrounded by people who didn't truly see me, but on this journey, I've discovered who I really am." Listening intently, Ben felt a connection blossoming between them once again, this time marked by shared dreams rather than fleeting encounters. "I want to build friendships based on understanding and respect," Violet added earnestly. "And I want to help you with your ranch if you'll have me." Ben's heart raced. The thought of her assistance brought hope amid his struggles. "I could certainly use all the help I can get," he admitted. "Things have been tough here lately." For a moment, they stood together in silence as their gazes met, both recognizing the unspoken bond that had formed between them, a friendship fortified through trials and authenticity. As they began to discuss ideas for improving the ranch and shared their aspirations for the future, laughter filled the air around them like music weaving into the fabric of their lives. Time slipped by unnoticed as they exchanged stories about their pasts filled with challenges and dreams nurtured through their experiences. It wasn't just about lending a horse anymore, it was about two souls coming together to find solace from their respective burdens. As dusk began to settle in, casting gentle shadows across the fields, Ben felt lighter than he had in weeks. With each word exchanged and every shared laugh, Violet brought not only hope but also the possibility of new beginnings, a future where they could support one another's dreams while healing from their struggles side by side. "I'm grateful you returned," Ben finally said with sincerity. Violet smiled back at him, her heart full of optimism as they embraced this unexpected reunion that sparked the beginning of something beautiful together on this journey toward friendship and beyond. As the days turned into weeks, a comfortable rhythm settled between Ben and Violet. Their friendship blossomed amid laughter and shared dreams, and with each passing moment, Violet's admiration for Ben grew deeper. She watched him work tirelessly on his ranch, his hands calloused yet gentle, pouring his heart into the land that had become both his livelihood and burden. One afternoon, as they sat on the porch after a long day of work, Violet observed the worry lines etched across Ben's forehead. The sun was setting, casting a warm glow around them, but she could see the shadows of doubt clouding his eyes. "Ben," she began cautiously, "have you thought about what might happen if more help came your way? Someone to invest in this ranch?" Ben chuckled softly at her suggestion. "With how things are going right now, I'm not sure anyone would even want to touch this place." His voice carried a hint of resignation. "But what if someone did?" Violet pressed gently, her heart racing at the thought of taking action. "What if that someone was me?" Ben turned to look at her, surprise flickering in his gaze. "You want to invest in my ranch?" he asked incredulously. "Yes," she replied earnestly. "I've been thinking about it since I returned. You showed me kindness when I needed it most, lending me Rusty, and it changed my life. I want to pay that forward by helping you." He shook his head slowly in disbelief as he processed her words. "But you're an heiress, you have your own world to navigate. Why would you want to get involved in all this?" Violet leaned forward, her voice steady and sincere. "Because I've realized that material wealth means nothing without genuine connection and purpose. Helping you with your ranch feels like the right thing to do, and I believe we can make it thrive together." For a moment, silence enveloped them as Ben weighed her proposal against the reality of his situation. He had always believed he could do things on his own. After all, pride often accompanied the cowboy spirit, but here was Violet offering him a lifeline when he felt he was sinking. "Are you sure about this?" he finally asked quietly. "Absolutely," she affirmed with conviction. "I want to be part of something meaningful, something we can build together." As Ben looked into Violet's eyes, filled with determination and warmth, hope rekindled within him like a spark catching fire. He felt a wave of gratitude wash over him, but also fear for what such an investment might mean for their budding friendship. "All right then," he said cautiously yet filled with newfound optimism. "If you're willing to take that leap with me, then I won't stand in your way." From that moment onward, Violet committed herself to Ben's ranch wholeheartedly, helping with whatever tasks needed attention while also brainstorming ways to improve their yield through better practices and resources. Her wealth became instrumental not just for financial support but also for ideas infused with creative energy. Together they dreamt of new horizons, fields bursting with crops, animals grazing freely in pastures, and perhaps someday visitors enjoying the beauty surrounding them, a stark contrast from the lonely estate Violet had fled. As their partnership deepened further over time, sharing victories and setbacks, their lives intertwined beyond mere business. It blossomed into companionship built on respect and mutual understanding. With every challenge they overcame together, they forged something beautiful, not just a thriving ranch but a relationship enriched by shared dreams and heartfelt gratitude. A testament to their resilience as individuals who found solace together amidst life's unpredictability. As the weeks turned into months, Ben and Violet settled into a harmonious routine that blended their different worlds. With Violet's investment and fresh ideas, the ranch began to transform. She proposed projects to improve the land, introducing sustainable farming practices and innovative techniques to increase their crop yield. Ben was amazed at her creativity and willingness to learn about ranching, while Violet soaked in every bit of knowledge he imparted, her respect for his hard work growing deeper each day. One sunny morning, they decided to tackle the weeding that had gotten out of hand. Equipped with sun hats and gloves, they took to the field side by side, working in tandem to clear the stubborn weeds choking their crops. Laughter echoed across the landscape as they shared stories of their childhoods, Ben recalling tales of wild adventures with his friends in the hills around his home, while Violet described her own escapades in gardens filled with exotic flowers under her family's watchful eye. "Who knew weeding could be so much fun?" she joked, pulling up another stubborn root. Ben chuckled. "I'll take your word for it," he replied playfully. "But you make it a lot easier with all that laughter." As they worked, a bond deeper than friendship began to form between them, one marked not just by shared experiences but by mutual support and understanding. They discussed future ambitions amidst the rhythmic sound of their labor. Violet found herself daydreaming about turning the ranch into a welcoming space for visitors, offering them a taste of the beautiful landscapes she now adored. "Imagine families coming here to reconnect with nature," she suggested excitedly. "We could host workshops, teach people how to farm sustainably. It would add life to this place." Ben nodded thoughtfully, his heart swelling with hope at her enthusiasm. "That sounds like a dream worth building," he agreed, feeling grateful for Violet's vision. As evenings fell and they often shared quiet moments under the stars, they would talk about everything from dreams to fears. One night, after a long day of work followed by an impromptu picnic beneath a sprawling oak tree, Violet opened up about her past, laying bare her insecurities about fitting into a world that often felt so disconnected from her true self. "I've always felt like I had to wear a mask around others," she confessed softly. "But here, I don't feel that pressure. I can just be me." Ben smiled warmly in understanding. "You're not alone in feeling that way," he said gently. "You've brought light back into this place." In moments like these, they discovered more than just camaraderie. They found comfort in each other's vulnerabilities. Their shared laughter eased the weight of past struggles, crafting memories that intertwined seamlessly with their aspirations for the future. With each task they tackled together, the planting of seeds in freshly turned soil or repairing fences around the pastures, they found strength in their collaboration. It wasn't merely about improving the ranch anymore, it became an expression of their commitment to one another as friends and partners. As spring turned to summer and the warmth enveloped them like a familiar embrace, Ben felt invigorated not only by vibrant crops growing around them but also by a sense of purpose he hadn't realized he had been missing. With Violet by his side, an equal partner in every sense, the boundaries between their worlds began to dissolve beautifully. Together, they transformed not only the ranch but their lives. Through hard work and shared dreams, they forged an unbreakable bond that promised more than companionship. It heralded a new beginning where both could flourish amid life's unpredictable journey. In the heart of a changing landscape, Ben and Violet's lives intertwined, illustrating the power of kindness and connection in overcoming adversity. The transformation of the ranch mirrored not only their hard work but also the deeper ties that had formed between them, bonds built on trust, respect, and shared aspirations. Ben had once felt burdened by the weight of his worries, but now the ranch thrummed with energy and laughter, a direct reflection of Violet's vibrant spirit. Together, they showcased what can emerge when two seemingly different worlds collide. He, the steadfast cowboy rooted in the land, and she, the heiress yearning for authenticity in her life. What began as a simple act of lending a horse blossomed into a partnership that transcended their very backgrounds. Their continued collaboration not only focused on cultivating the land but also fostered a sense of community around them. As the ranch grew more productive, it began to attract interest from nearby townsfolk who were drawn by its charm and potential. Ben and Violet welcomed their neighbors with open arms, hosting community events that invited families and individuals to experience the beauty of nature together. Teaching others about sustainable farming and allowing local children to help plant seeds in the fertile soil. Through these gatherings filled with laughter and shared knowledge, strong connections flourished among everyone involved. The ranch became a sanctuary, a place where people sought solace from their own challenges and formed friendships based on understanding and camaraderie. It showed Violet that community thrives not just on wealth or status but often flourishes through compassion and genuine engagement. One evening, as twilight descended over the horizon, casting soft hues of orange and purple across the sky, Ben and Violet sat together on the porch, reflecting on everything they had achieved. The soft rustle of leaves in the evening breeze echoed their sentiments, a reminder of how far they had come since their first meeting on that rugged trail. Who would have thought lending a horse would lead to this? Ben mused, glancing at Violet with gratitude in his eyes. "It's incredible how a small act can create such change," she replied thoughtfully. "I think we never truly know how our kindness can ripple out to others." As they both marveled at how their lives had transformed through unexpected connections, Ben's heart swelled with appreciation, not just for Violet's presence but for the community they had nurtured together. He recognized that their journey was not merely about personal success, it was about uplifting those around them, fostering an environment where kindness could flourish. Every laugh shared resonated with hope for a brighter future. Together, they had turned a struggling ranch into a thriving haven for many, reminding one another that true fulfillment lies in giving back to those who needed it most. In this beautiful tapestry of intertwined lives, Ben and Violet learned that no matter where one comes from, genuine connection fosters resilience against life's unpredictability. They discovered meaning in community, an echoing truth that showed them how two very different individuals could join forces to create something far greater than themselves. A legacy imprinted in hearts and memories woven together through threads of kindness and friendship. Thus, they embarked onward, each step enriched with purpose as they looked forward to all possibilities life held for them and their cherished community ahead.